Aloha. Welcome to the Walking in Aloha, Let's Talk Story podcast. We're so glad to have you here. At Como Mai. Now here's our podcast host and award-winning author, Michelle.
Aloha! Welcome to the Walking in Aloha, Let's Talk Story podcast. We are here today with Rachel, and I'm going to let you say your last name. I know you told me how to say it, but...
It is an unusual one. It's
Sietzema?
Sietzema.
Sietzema. Oh, yeah, I like that.
Seat and then Zema, but it's not spelled that way. But
it's okay. No one can ever pronounce my last name either, so I understand.
Yeah.
But thank you for being with us today. I'm so glad that you're here. I know that we tried to set this up for a while now, but
yes,
we made it happen, and we're on like opposite sides of the world. And I find it so amazing because like we were just talking about it a minute ago that I'm like in summer and you are in winter, right? Yeah.
And I'm envious. I'm looking at you in a t-shirt going,
right? And you're like, oh, I'm hot. I have to turn on the fan. And you're like, I can share with you some of my coolness. But yeah, thank you again for being on.
Thank you so much.
Let's see where I want to start here. Because today's topic, it's such a topic that everyone needs, and I know I need it. But the title is "It's Okay to Say No: How to Put a Stop to People Pleasing." And you know, I want to introduce you properly, so let me get over here. I am lost. Just before we got on, right? My computer switched over, right? Yeah. And I had to switch computers. It was just so crazy. It was the craziest thing. I had to switch computers over, and I have my questions, but I don't have the introduction.
It's interesting because this brings up that whole people pleasing.
Yes.
I will talk because
yes, you go ahead and talk.
It's really interesting because this is a classic. I'm watching you cope with this and thinking there's a degree to which I can see you've done work on people pleasing because the more we're trapped in that state, it paralyzes us when we're in a state of fear. So right now, many people, I think included, would panic a little bit when things don't work, when the computer breaks down or you can't find your notes. Those things can make us be destructive on ourselves and stop being able to function. Big part of that comes from wanting to please. Don't want to let down your listeners. Don't want to let down this time, your guest, whatever. And by doing that, by focusing on that, you become even more useful. Whereas you just going, this has happened, I've just got to deal with it, and I've just got to do the best that I can, allows you to stay present as opposed to running. What are they thinking? How do I need to be? What do I need to? I've got to make it right by everyone. You've just got to do what you can do.
Right. And, you know, I realize that because I have lived a whole lot of that people pleasing. And I'm like we just talked about, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You know, you're going to get to that point where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. Well, you really don't. you really don't. But it's going to happen. And like now, there's nothing I can do. You know, it happened and it happened. And I'm looking at my notes right now and I'm like, okay, really, I can't find it.
Okay.
I'm
So do you mind if
scrolling
I
and,
introduce myself?
and
Would
yeah,
that be
and so
okay?
that's where I'm at right now. And I just read through it while you were talking, and I'm like, to be honest, I can't find it. And Rachel, can you just introduce yourself, because I know you would do a wonderful job, because I read your things and you are an amazing person, and you have a lot, and I don't want to have to try to guess at it, right? So I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
So I am a mindset coach, and I've been doing this for about, I think I'm in my 7th year. But to be honest, this is who I am. I've just always loved to understand people and support people. But as years have gone on, it's become evident that the people that come to me have issues with people pleasing. And why would that be, Michelle? That would be because I had issues with people pleasing. I was the queen of people pleasing. So that's what I want to bring to your audience today, is more awareness around this. So before I go there, let me explain. My background is in teaching, and then I taught in crazy places like the zoo and life education. But I really decided what I loved doing was impacting people's emotional world, trying to help them to operate differently. And as I went on, I discovered you can know a whole lot of stuff that doesn't make change.
Yeah.
Get stuck in just the knowing. The knowing, the awareness is awesome start, but it doesn't necessarily instigate the change that we're looking for. And so that's why my work works a lot with the unconscious. I know that when we're really stuck, when we're really triggered, we're in an unconscious state. And so what you just demonstrated just then to the audience was how not to sink into an unconscious state. Because when we're in an unconscious state, there is very little capacity to come up with a new idea. And yet you paused and actually found, I could get her to introduce herself. Not what you had planned, not what you had scripted, not what was in your conscious mind, but you went, okay, stop, pause, find creativeness. How can we do this differently? Perfect. And that's what we all need to be whole and operate in the world, is to get out of reacting and to find a response. You did it beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's, I just,
Know that when we really
now Facebook wants to play us over there. I'm telling you, my other computer has a mind of its own today. It's so let me.
I just want to keep in your audience lots of opportunities for things that you have to work with
Us over there. Right. I'm going to have to now mute it, because it's just okay. I'm not sure where you are with religion, but I'm a Christian, and I honestly believe that the enemy has a way of doing things, and it's I kind of think it's comical in a way, because I believe that whenever there is an importance, and there is going to be people reached, the enemy wants to come in and interfere. And it always seems to happen. And I just kind of laugh at it, because it is like a joke to me. I'm like, you want to try, but I know the tactics already. I've seen it happen so many times before that you can't do it. I am just going to work around you.
Can I just say there is an interesting frame there, because whether people believe in, an outside source influencing something, or even if they don't, what's interesting is what you've done there is you've given me a compliment, because you've said there's something important to be said here, so thank you very much. But
Yes.
you've reframed it, rather than going, which is what a lot of people will do, go, I was going to swear, oh, this isn't working. Oh, this isn't working. This is terrible. This is bad. You've
Yeah.
reframed it to go, this shows me how important this is. And that is something that we'll probably play with in this conversation, because the way we internalize something absolutely influences whether it's helpful or, and so learning to reframe like that and go, okay, this is very annoying for you. You know, it's distracting, it's hard, but now I know something greater this needs to happen, is a much more helpful stance than just getting lost in, it's not working.
Yes, because there is just too many times where people get caught up in that. They get caught up in the fact that things are not working. They get caught up in the fact of, oh my goodness, what can I do to change this? And they pull away from what is true and what is important, right? And they're stuck in this area of, oh my gosh, I need to fix this, I need to do this, and then it's lost. The important part is lost. And you're like, wait, hold a moment. Why don't you just get back to where God needs you to be? Get back to where the enemy is trying to pull you away from, and let people hear what needs to be heard.
Absolutely.
Because that is where the enemy's trying to get you away from. And so I'm like, no, there is something that needs to be heard. There is somebody that needs to hear this message right now. And whether it's going to be live on Facebook right now or posted later, it's going to be done. And no matter what he tries to do, it's going to be done. So there, And so I'm so glad. I'm so glad that, we can just go with the flow. And that's the thing that I love about Let's Talk Story. So the reason why when I came up with Walking in Aloha, Let's Talk Story is back in the day, that's the way people communicated, right? They would sit around, they would talk story. There wasn't any internet. There wasn't phones or anything like that. The message of how things spread was through communication, was through talking. And that's how people's lives, like, they were what we do as coaches. That's how it happened, right? You would tell one person and they would tell another, and that's how healing happened.
And I
right?
love that ripple effect, what you just
Yeah.
said. I love that one person, hopefully many people can hear this, but that one person that hears something then ripples it out to those around them. And that's why these conversations are so important. The conversation we have is just one of hopefully many conversations that come from this, for people to learn to reframe and see something differently in their life to support them.
Yes, exactly.
So are you okay if I give your audience a little bit of a glimpse into people pleasing and what it looks like? Because I know
definitely.
I know that commonly people know of someone who's a people pleaser. That's really easy. Like, oh yeah, I know someone who's a people pleaser. But they don't always recognize that they are people pleasing. And so I thought it might be interesting to go through the different qualities of people pleasing as a beautiful author, Emma Reed Terrell. She wrote a book called Please Yourself, and it's just a fabulous book about the different types of people pleasers and just getting behind it. But I wanted to give you her description because I just think it's really profound. So she talks about classic people pleasers, and they're the people who take a lot of pride in being helpful and thoughtful and accommodating. They gain their identity from being appreciated. It's almost a bit of a fix. I would say fix three of these categories. I know this is a harsh thing to say, but it's a bit like taking a drug, or our addiction, because it actually makes us feel good when we support others, right? So that's the classic people pleaser, and they're really good at hosting parties or really effective at work. They just know how to get. But then there's the shadow people pleasers. And those are the people that actually often grew up in around a dominant or emotionally demanding, but they stay in the background. They're very good at boosting other people's egos, but not so good at demanding any of their own needs or seeking out their own needs to be met. And they tend to be supporters of others, which sounds really nice, but it means that they're often not getting to their goals. So a lot of people in business, for example, may be this, and then they wonder why they find it hard to set up a business. That's because they can never prioritize their stuff over everyone else's. It's not because they don't have the skill. They have the skill for everyone else, just not for themselves at the same time. And then there's the pacifier people pleaser. Now, this group tends to have had a lot of conflict in their and they're more seeking to please people or not to displease people. That's their real goal here. And they're focused on keeping peace and staying neutral. Now, that sounds nice, but it means they will avoid conflict. Anyone that's doing anything in an absolute is going to struggle. So if we're always trying to be happy, horrible. You don't want to be around someone like that. It's anyone that's being angry all the time. Well, we know we don't want to be around that. Yeah. But both of those states and many others are really important, but it's about a balance. So this person has to avoid conflict, cannot handle it. Very they often grew up in volatile homes, and that's what's has created it. And then there's the unexpected people pleaser. And this is what I really wanted to tell you listeners about, because this is the one that often gets overlooked. And it's called the resistor people pleaser. And this group of people, they push people away because they're trying to avoid not pleasing people. But that makes them look like they're not a people pleaser, but they just won't get involved. So they won't come to the party because they don't know how to act and they don't want to upset anyone, or they won't be involved in that work if it not don't want to do it, but because they don't fail in it and displease someone. So they look literally like the opposite of a people pleaser, but that's is the same. So I hope that gives your listeners a chance maybe to see where parts of them are doing this, because I don't want them to think either that they are just this. This is an element of them that might be out of perspective, but it's not saying this is the sum total of who they are. This is just, but it's an aspect that when it's out of control is debilitating to live with. And so that's why we're addressing it today.
Yes, that is so true. So, I caught myself in that. I try not to, because like I said, I lived a long time in that people pleasing, and it was, like you said, it is debilitating. I was in a domestic violence relationship and living with a narcissist. You are constantly trying to please because you're like, I don't know what I did wrong. You're like, I don't know what I did wrong. So maybe if I did this, it would be okay, And so it did. It became constant trying to please. And it was hard. And so I became more aware of that and became more aware of how I was living. And so now I find myself acutely aware. Walking in Aloha, it's affirmations and actions, leadership and love, overcoming obstacles, health and healing, and acute awareness. And that part is where I look at, right? Acute awareness. But I found myself, at least I was aware that I caught myself being that people pleaser. And I went to work and I was talking to one of my coworkers and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this podcast and it's on people pleasing and it's okay to say no. And I found myself not okay with saying no, and I was like, yeah, but you're a human being and it's going to come up. And so I think one thing that we need to understand and address is that, yeah, we're human and it's going to come up, but the important part of it is being aware, and recognizing the fact that you don't want to be a doormat, right? That's the thing. You don't want to be a doormat. You don't want to be that person that's constantly people pleasing, but you do want to be aware when it does come up.
And I think too, it's recognizing whenever we see these shadow sides of ourselves, these parts of ourselves we don't really like, it's so important that we don't dismiss that they all have a place, and that part of you that can fall into people pleasing and that had a history and people pleasing actually came about for a very good reason. It was protecting you, that in that phase of your life was the best strategy you could come up with to keep yourself safe. And that is true for most of us. Most people-pleasing behavior starts very early on in our lives. We learn, we're not noticed as a child. We might be a middle child, and for whatever reason, there's not enough time and people don't seem to give us the attention. We learn to people please because we learn that gets us the attention we need. We get noticed, yeah? And in your case, and in many people's case, in my case, there's a lot of trauma that's created that. I wanted to say it doesn't have to be that level of trauma for that strategy to be created, and then that restriction that it creates in our life. Because when you're not free to choose who you give to and who you don't, you said it beautifully, you become a doormat. You so easily be abused and used and just lose yourself to addressing others.
Right. Like you're saying, it does come from somewhere. And I came from a family of 6 kids, and I'm the middle of 6 kids. Is it like, do you believe that it's somewhere like that where you come from a big family and you're like, oh, I need to be noticed somehow, so is that how?
That's one of the elements that it can be. And I wanted to say that because for some it's the violence. For some people it's that literally their dads are drunk every night, and the best way to not trigger his anger is to, or their mums, let's face it can go either way, is to just placate, make them happy, do whatever they say, predict that they're not going to have made the meal, so you make the meal, make sure that they've got the milk in the fridge, so you do the shop. Like, you step out of being a child and you step into being an adult way too soon. And yet I wanted to say it can be as simple. It's not simple. It's an innate need in all of us to be noticed. So why would you not learn to people please if you're not being noticed? Yeah. So there are many factors that can influence it. I personally think that you can even have people pleasing in your nature. And when I say nature, everything is changeable. Everything is changeable.
Yeah.
But you can have had that as a strategy in your life because you saw it modeled from your parent. It might be that your dad or your mum is a people pleaser, and so you've gone into life with this idea that this is how we do it. And to be really honest, I've grown up in a Christian family too, and I think Christianity creates people pleasers because we have this incredible value for service, which is divine. I mean, the world does not exist without each other and service, but at the same time, we haven't really grasped when God said, love thy neighbor as thyself. He didn't leave off as thyself. You know, he said
Right.
that
Yes.
for a reason, because we go straight into, I'll love you and acts of service and it's great. But we've missed, no, come back. Clearly, over and over again, it says you need to protect yourself. And that is not being done enough. It feels selfish. It feels uncomfortable. It doesn't feel Christ-like. Well, that's not true, because Christ walked into the desert. He left everyone. He didn't go, I can't go now for 40 days and 40 nights because my mum needs me and I need to, like, there was an awareness that he needed to do things and be uncomfortable in things like turning over tables, because we need to be able to choose what is the appropriate action for this moment, not is what is going to make me happy.
Yes.
And so
That
you
is,
said it beautifully before when we were talking, when you talked about writing the book at the moment. No, the chapter, was it? You say that was a
yeah.
beautiful example of it.
Yeah, that is so good because like I did mention before, I was asked to write the first chapter of the first book for my church, and that's when I caught myself in that that people pleasing because as she asked me to rewrite it, I know that I could see why I needed to rewrite it because it didn't flow with the rest of the chapters. I wrote it completely different. I'm a creative writer, and so yeah, it wouldn't read well, and I totally understand. But I did have other things, and I was like, okay, yeah, sure, without even saying anything else, right? Without telling about the other thing, and I'm like, just saying yes, and it's like inside of myself, it's like I could have been honest. I could have told her, yeah, I have these other things, so at least she would understand, right? Have that understanding, share that understanding. It's not like that is something I should not have done. But somewhere inside, you're like, oh, but what if she's disappointed? What if she feels up, like I have too much on my plate, all those things. But you're making it up in your own mind. And a lot of times that's what we do. We start making things up in our own mind before we even let it out.
And it's really interesting. As you were saying that, I was thinking, when you watch, and this is going to sound out of context, but it's not. When you watch someone do something and they're exquisitely good at it, and you think, oh, I could do that. Like I used to work in a life ed van, which is going around and teaching a drug prevention program, and I would present. And when I was learning, I looked at them and I just went, oh, yeah, that's great. I'll do that. Yep. And I'm watching and I'm going, yeah, yeah. And then I got in front of them and it was like, oh my goodness, I can't do this. I can't do this. But one of the things that we do is if something looks easy, we think it is easy. Yeah. So if the person can do it well, we think it's easy. Well, if you present as though, yeah, I can be flexible. Yeah, this is easy. No worries. How on earth is the other person meant to know how complicated it is? So you just stopping and pausing and saying to that person, I hear what you're saying. I understand it's not flowing with the rest of the book, but I've got to say, I have got a whole lot on right now. I need you to know this is a juggle for me, and I probably need to think about this, how I'm going to fit this in. Suddenly you've given them a frame to be able to understand your humanness and to get perspective and to stop doing what they do, which is looking at everybody else's life and thinking they do it easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we think we're making excuses and, oh, I shouldn't bother them with my problems. I would actually say you're not. You're being real. You're telling them how it is so that they can get a better perspective on what they're asking of you.
Right. And, you know, now that I think about it, because it is the Great Commission, right? And it wasn't easy, you know, it wasn't easy. So to share that and to know that, okay, you know, you are willing to do this, yet it's not easy. It fits so much better than me acting like, oh yeah, sure, no worries. You know?
And it's a bit like, I feel like I'm jumping, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's a bit like the person that does that work life and, you know, does, let's say they're meant to have a 40-hour week and they do a 60-hour week and they think, you know, that's okay. They then make it harder for the next person that comes in afterwards. And every time you are saying yes easily, then that next person goes on thinking they should get that response from the next person and the next person. So you suddenly being real and saying, actually, this is really hard. I find this really hard. Leave it with me. I'll see what I can do, but I've got a lot to juggle. Suddenly you've allowed them to go, oh, I'm not the only one that will be feeling that at times. Oh, I like the way she did that. She actually took time for herself. And you're modeling to others what they need to do as well. Not that I want you to become everyone's teacher, but just that, wouldn't it be nice if what we gave others enhanced their life and didn't make it even harder? And I think by being yes people, we always think we're making it easier. We're not. There's there's many ways in which we're not, but two that I want to point out is, one, we're acting like life is easy when it's not. So we're kind of living a lie. And two, we're stopping them from finding the resources in themselves or turning to another person for help or finding a creative other solution by being the rescuer, helper that we oh so love to be, because it's a lovely feeling when we help each other.
That is so true. That is so true. You know, and it's like, as I think as people and as the coaches that we are, and as the, I say servants of God as we are, but sometimes we need to be that models though, you know, like if we can just be there's that saying, I don't know how it goes now, but there's that saying where you want to be what what the world needs to see. You know, you want to be what the world needs to see. And so if you can model that, then, and people pick it up, not that you want to be everyone's teacher, right? But you just model it, then you could make the world a better place without having to be that teacher for everyone because you're just modeling it. So like at work, I work TSA, and TSA can get, you know, at the airport, I'm the one that tells you to take your things out of your bag. I'm the one that, you know, so a lot of times it's not the nicest job or anything like that. But there's so many times where people come up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, you're the first smile that I've seen. You know, it's like, you're the nicest person in here. And I'm like, you know, I don't know why. I don't know why it has to be that way, but thank you, you know, have a good day. And it's like, I just want to be that person, right? You want to be that person that makes life better for someone else, even if it's just that smile, even if it's just that kind word as they pass on by, or when you're helping them with their bags. You just want to be that person, because I think life is stressful as it is. You know, they're already stressed out getting through the airport, and sometimes you can see that having their kids, getting their bags. You're like, let me just help you out. Yeah, there's so much going on.
And this is where we're not trying to polarize and say you need to stop people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop not having a choice around where you do it. Yeah. So it's not about saying we just need to look out for ourselves and be not at all. It's about being able to say, where am I best? Where is my energies best to invest to be able to be effective in this world? And is that always saying yes? No, not for anyone. Is that always saying yes? It's about being able to say no. I'm going to do something weird because I can feel my brain ticking in the background. And there's a sound that I keep hearing. And I don't know if it's coming from the fan, and I don't know if your audience hears it, but there's a sound often coming through. And I just wondered, I needed to say it to you. One, because it's in the back of my head, but two, because it may make the listener's experience better if we work out what that background sound is.
Okay.
Can you hear it, Michelle?
It might be the sun. It might be the fan.
Can you hear it at all at your end? Okay, I'll just...
No, because it might be the fan. I did say, yeah.
Yeah, it stopped now. It stopped now. So it just meant that they were hearing a lot of extra sound. So that means we're probably going to fry you if we don't have that sound.
So yeah, like I was saying earlier, I'm in Hawaii, so it is hot, and I forgot who said it, but I know my pastor said it. A lot of people start in their garage. And well, this is my garage. And I used to do my podcast inside the house, but I live downstairs. My in-laws live upstairs. And the stairs, I still could hear a lot of what was going on upstairs. And I could not stop the sound from the stairwell, right? It's not like there's a doorway. So, right. So there was no way for me to stop the sound that was coming from the stairway. So I was like, how do I do that? And so I told my husband, I said, I'm going to create a studio in the garage. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, okay, so from now on, you're going to park the car outside. And so our car literally parks outside, and this is where I am. But because it is the garage, in order for me,
so much hotter.
Yes, and because I don't want the outside sound, the garage door stays down. And so I need to run the fan. And so that's why the fan was running.
Can I just say, Michelle, it reminds me of Brené Brown. I don't know if your listeners know Brené Brown.
Yes, I know.
A fantastic podcaster and just researcher. And she does the best work on vulnerability. But what reminded me of it was I remember hearing that she started her podcast in a closet. And I just went, yeah. And this is a really good demonstration to your listeners. We often get hung up on everything having to be perfectly aligned before we start anything. And especially that is true for people pleasers, because along with people pleasing, when you have issues with people pleasing, it goes hand in hand with perfectionism, procrastination, indecisiveness. And so it's really helpful to realize, right, part of letting go of people pleasing is also letting go of perfectionism, which allows you to get things started. Because some of your listeners out there will be struggling to get something started. They've had a great idea. They've had it sitting there for years, and they're now starting to convince themselves that it's never going to happen. And I would like to say to them, that is not true. It is about learning to say no so that they can find time for themselves. And also, I love this quote. I don't know who it's by. I think it's an unknown one. But it's, anything worth doing is worth doing badly first. And you just go, what? Anything worth doing is worth doing badly first. And it's true. You think about any person that's ever learned to ride a bike, They did not do it well the first time they got on. But by doing it, they became really good at it. Most of us do, yeah? And that's true for anything that we do. And yet what we tend to do, and I've been guilty of this, I've looked at Brene Brown and thought, oh, I'm nowhere near what she is. I will never be able to be that. And if that then stops me from having a go, it's such a waste of a life. It's so much better to go, I'll just do it and I'll get better at it by doing it.
Yes, exactly. When walking in Aloha, 5 steps to living your God potential life was presented to me, and it was like in a dream. I was told to write a book, and I was like, how do I write a book? I don't even know how to write a book. I've never written a book. And I was like, I don't know if I am qualified to write a book
Worthy
to write a book, that kind of thing. And so many people was like telling me, oh, when I shared my testimony that I should write a book. And I was like, nah, and I literally was woken up from a dream, and it was so clear that I was supposed to write this book that I had to pray. And I asked God, I said, Lord, if you need me to write this book, then you need to help me, because I don't know how to write a book. And that's when he said, I gave you everything in Aloha. And I was like, what does that mean? And so I started writing what he did in my life to get me through. And that's where I found that as I wrote it down, it was Aloha, the affirmations that I was writing down and the actions that I had to take, leading my own self out of that domestic violence, learning to love myself, overcoming the obstacles, the health and the healing that I had to go through, and then the acute awareness. And it came out to be ALOHA. And I was like, wow, I was like, wow, that is so good, and you don't know what you don't know. And if you keep saying, oh, I don't have it, I don't, I have to wait till I got all this experience. I have to wait till no, you just start, you start in your garage, you start with a prayer, you start with scratch paper, you start.
And I think that's one of the fallacies in most people's minds is they look at everybody else thinking that they're starting with a level of confidence, thinking that they've got it together. And yet most people, when they start a new job of any description, they feel like a fraud. And as they work themselves into it, they start to believe it. And I think I love the line of fake it until you believe it, because you're putting your shoulders back, you're pretending that you're meant to be here and adequate to be here and informed enough and whatever. But by doing that, by presenting yourself each day and keeping on going, you actually build skill, and then eventually you own it. And then you realize this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing.
Right. So, because everyone starts somewhere, and that's one thing that I had to tell myself, is that everyone starts somewhere. The greatest artists had to start somewhere. Authors, they're writing bestsellers, had to start somewhere. Everyone had to start somewhere. And the whole thing is starting, right?
Absolutely.
And if you continue to think about what other people think, because your mind is stuck on that people pleasing. And if you keep on thinking like, oh, but what will they say? What will they think about me? What will they, you'll never get anywhere, because you're going to be stuck in that mindset of, what are they going to say? But you're making it up in your mind. It didn't even happen yet,
And what we forget is that background script that we have in our head actually takes so much energy. So for all of us, we have so many thoughts in a day. Many studies say that we have 12,000 to 70,000 thoughts in a day, and 85% of those are negative. And when I say negative, I mean like, I need to do the shopping. Oh, I've still got to contact such and such. How am I going to organize the dry cleaners and get to the thing in time? Oh, what are we having for dinner tonight? All of those thoughts that we do have a lot of weight and take up space in our head. And the amazing thing is most of the thoughts that we're having are the same as the day before. 95% of them are the same. So we're just running this loop of constantly thinking negative thoughts, and it's incredibly draining. And that script of saying, oh, I don't think I'm good enough, I can't start a podcast yet because, it absolutely gets in the way of you being able to take action. So all I would encourage your clients to, you can tell we're coaches. All I'd encourage your listeners to do is if they're wanting to start something, just start noticing that internal script. What are they saying to themselves? Whether they're people pleasers or not, that internal script, it will be holding them back. So if they just start hearing it and then giving an alternate voice. So mine classically is, we both are getting more into public speaking, and I run a script of, oh, I haven't done enough. Oh, I don't think I'm ready enough. Oh, am I articulate enough? Can I talk confidently enough? All of those things go through my mind. And yet if I actually said, well, what if you just do your best? What if you just think of this as another trial run? What if you just give it a go? What if you remember the time that you did the last podcast and that went really well? Entirely different energy for me than going, can I do this? Am I good enough? I think I'll wait until I'm a bit better before I start. And that's true no matter whether it's podcasting or whether it's finding a new job or whether it's learning how to sew. It can be anything. We all run that negative, or we all can run that negative script, and we need to change that.
Yeah. And, it's like with anything, it's that first time. Yeah, it's going to be hard. That first time. It's going to be, like, how do I do it? And then you're like, oh, wait, that wasn't so bad. And then you're like, wait, I know how to do that. And it'll get better and better. I forgot who said it, but they were saying, and you were talking about speaking. If you want to speak, you're going to have to speak. If you want to dance, you're going to have to dance. If you're going to, whatever you want to do, you're going to have to do that thing. You can't say, I want to do this and then not do it and expect it to be. So that's the thing. Like, why would you expect anything different? Oh, the garage.
Okay. I think your listeners would realize what's happening.
But, it's like you have to do the thing. You cannot expect to want to do something and not. So if you want to start a podcast and then you say, oh, I don't have the equipment. No, you do. You have your phone, everybody has a smartphone nowadays. So you can start a podcast and, just keep making those excuses of why you can't, then you won't.
Exactly. Right? I love Henry Ford's. If you think you can't, you're right.
You're right.
And it's so true. We spend a whole lot of time convincing ourselves of how we can't do something rather than believing that we can.
Yes.
and finding the ways to make it happen. And I loved your comment about you've just got to take action, because I think there's intention, and that is really great. And, you know, we know the power of prayer and having an intention, but we also need to do. We also need to get out there and give things a go. And there's no greater place that I see this than in my garden, because when I moved into this house, it was just a jungle. It was absolutely diabolical. And then we got rid of the jungle only to watch the weeds grow and grow. Now, finally, I think it's 12 years on, I have the most beautiful garden. And it just took dedicated, slow, constant action. And I love the garden for that, because it's not like, I think one of the things that we do is that we imagine that if we, say, for example, have this epiphany around people pleasing and realize that, you know, we shouldn't do that anymore, right? We're now like, right, so now I've got that and now I can move on to something else. No, this is a constant weeding process. You will get a handle on noticing yourself people pleasing in one context and get really good at going, oh, I need to say no to my kids. I've been saying yes to my kids far too often. I've got to, and you will practice that and you will get good at it. And then suddenly you realize, oh, I didn't realize I do that at work. That's why I keep volunteering for everything that nobody else wants to do, because it makes me feel good when I do it, but I'm feeling overwhelmed at work. So we now learn, oh, I've got to keep weeding every day, a little bit every day, to actually make that huge transformation to a beautiful garden. Except, you know, like with every garden, I got to keep going. It's not like I've landed and I've got the garden of all gardens. I've only got the garden of gardens if I keep gardening. And we're the same. We have to keep attending to ourselves, keep noticing where we're giving away our energy and where we need to actually be more aware of ourselves and make choices rather than just having reactions.
That is so good. That is so good. You know, like my pastor was bringing up the fact of a garden. I like that you bring up a garden, because the weeds are there, right? The flowers are there, and you have a choice. You have a choice. You can either let the weeds take over, or you can let the flowers and the whatever you want to grow, right? So there's a choice of what you want to grow. And whatever you want to grow is what you're going to let grow. You can let the weeds grow, or you can
Absolutely.
let the flowers grow.
And that's that thing of thoughts. You know, you asked me earlier, what would I suggest to your listeners to help them in this journey? And I would say one of the practices that I do with my clients is to say, okay, we need to learn to refocus your brain. Your brain is so switched in to knowing what's wrong, to noticing what's wrong. It's not learning to give credit to what's going well. And what we look at, we notice. Now, if your audience thinks back to the time that they had bought a car, they will notice that when they bought that car, whatever car it was, or whatever jumper, or whatever the thing was, suddenly they saw more of that out there. Yeah. So they will notice that same color or that same make model of the car out there everywhere and be going, oh, so many. There is the same amount on the road as there was the day before they bought the car. The difference is their attention has changed. And so what we've got to learn to do is change our attention and actually give attention to the things that are good, to the things that are life-giving, rather than constantly going, I'm not enough of this, I'm not enough of that, I feel inadequate in this way, I can't do that, I'm afraid of that. And that's where we're looking. So that's what we're seeing. Whereas if we start going, well, I did that bit well. I like how I paused before I said anything to Frank about what I do at work, like just holding back and doing 1 ounce of that step better. That's the bit we need to give credit to, not the fact that we didn't actually say no this time. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
we
right.
kind of only tend to give ourselves credit when we've nailed it. And if you do that, well, you're going to be waiting a really long time. So it is much better to learn to notice the little bit that we did. And if you think about a child learning to walk, we don't go, oh, you've nailed it. Well done. Excellent. We go, oh, that you just stood for a second. Fantastic. And they fall on their bum. But we don't go, oh, but you fell on your bum. You fell on your bottom. That's no good. We focus on what they've achieved. And yet we rarely do that with ourselves. We need to do this, have the same grace with ourselves and notice what we do. So with my clients, one of the things that I suggest is that you actually come up with 3 things that you're good at each day, every day. The only problem with that is I can immediately hear people's voices. And what they will be doing is going, yes, but I didn't do this part of it. And so now they've cancelled it out. So I never just give them 3 things that they're good at. I say 3 things that you forgive yourself for. Okay, so you be thankful for 3 things that you did well or proud of, but then you give acknowledgement to 3 things that you have to forgive yourself for. Because then by doing that, you eliminate the need to edit it out because it wasn't perfect. So for example, you might say, I'm really proud of the fact that I talked to my daughter today about how she's behaving. And in the back of your mind, you're going, yeah, but I should have done that weeks ago. And so you go, and I forgive myself for not having done that weeks ago. And now you can hold it has value and I can see room for growth.
Yeah.
And I can learn to forgive myself. Yeah. And I think it's that being able to hold, it doesn't have to be done perfectly. It's just about getting started and noticing what we do rather than noticing what we don't.
That is so good, and then it doesn't eliminate it, but it just gives it that almost like not credibility, because you don't want to give credit to what was wrong, but you do notice it. You do put it into awareness, and you're like, oh, that is so good, because you do want to, even the bad things, you want to have awareness in those things, because if you just keep pushing those aside, you never learn, right? And I know that we are already at the 3:00 mark, but would you mind staying on for a little bit longer and then going over those questions that I sent? Because I know that it's such a good thing.
I have tried to actually answer some of those along the way, but yes, absolutely. I've got time to answer more.
That'll be great. So we'll just go over that in the Aloha way. So affirmations and actions. That first question that I sent over to you was, in people pleasing, people struggle with inner self-talk, and I know that we touched on that. I'm only valuable when I'm needed. What are some powerful affirmations or daily actions that you recommend? Oh, my words just got smaller. To start shifting from approval seeking to self-worth rooted in truth.
So I want to say to that, I want to go back a step, because the affirmations, you need to first understand how to your mind works, and we've covered that. We've talked about the negative self-talk. But one of the things, and then we've talked about this gratitude, being aware of what you need to be thankful for and not dismissing it just because it's, not perfect.
Mhm.
But the biggest thing I wanted to say to that was actually it comes back to the essence of who you see Christ as. And when you talk about, we often see ourselves as what we do, but God never saw that. God always talks about himself and Christ and us as I am, not I do. And so it's that ability to sit in, I am enough. I am unconditionally loved no matter where I'm at. I just realized I've got an issue. I've got to just quickly get some power. Didn't realize that. Can you think of some place where you've noticed, while I'm gone doing this, of a
Yeah.
place where you've noticed that you can run that script and I've not enough, I'm not enough.
Oh,
And
yeah.
how we cannot play into that, but play into the I am enough without all the doing. Because part of that people pleasing is do, do, do. Do means I'm valuable. Do, do, do.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So for me, the I am, I always felt like I needed to do more, even with my books, even with my writing, the more that I did. But I, it was like, I always felt like it's not enough, right? I had to write more, I had to do more, I had to, but it's what's in me. It's what God has already given me and what I already have inside of me. And I am who God created me to be. I am a child of God. And I believe now that that is enough because I was created by the Creator to be a creative. And I feel now that through my healing, that God has given me that, um, it's now solid in me where I'm like, you know what? I am who He created me to be. And I have what it takes to be who He created me to be. I don't have to wait on anyone else. I don't have to get approval from anyone else. You know, that is so
And
key.
so using that as a mantra is actually quite a good way to be. God knows we're enough. We need to remind ourselves that we're enough. So even
Yeah,
just saying, I am enough, whatever you're going to do, I'm enough of a gardener. I'm enough of a parent. I mean, how many of us as parents run that script of I'm not enough? And it doesn't mean you're saying you're doing it perfectly. You're just saying you're enough where you're at. You're doing the best you can with the resources that you've got right now. Yeah. So, yeah, that would be one of the scripts that I would say to your audience is to just use the words I am enough
that
over and over when they're addressing something, when they're starting a new challenge. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means I'm enough and I'm coming to it with what I can for now. And it
right,
will only get better the more I practice it.
right. And it's okay to be enough. That, you know. So, with leadership and love, you teach from a place of both heart and strength. How can someone begin leading their life with love without losing themselves in the process? And what does healthy, life led leadership look like for a recovering people pleaser?
I think we've covered that a lot today, but I think the key is to authenticity. If you think behind what's happening every time we need to be seen so beautifully and perfectly and helpfully, there's an inauthenticity in all of that. And we think that just sounds so odd to say, but we're not being balanced. We're not coming to the table with our flaws and our faults and our limitations and our needs. And really, if we want to be whole in any situation, we can't park half of us at the door and then expect to be a whole self. We have to bring all of us. And the more we bring all of us to the table, all those messy bits that most of us want to hide, the more we give permission for everybody else to do the same. And then we have a society of real, genuine, loving, caring people. And there's one other thing I'd like to touch on here, and I hope you see the relevance. There's a word that people often use, and that is being nice. It's nice to be nice. And I would actually say that is such an unhelpful way to be. We don't need to be nice. We need to be kind. And kind sometimes means being harsh. It means having that conflict. It means making that awkward comment. It means saying no. But it's actually kinder to say no, kinder to yourself and kinder to them than just being an agreeable doormat.
Yeah, that is true. It, in a more simplistic way, people think that, oh, I don't want to tell that person that their fly is open. Right?
Beautiful example. Beautiful example. But you are being kind to tell them.
Being kind. Yes, you have
Absolutely.
to. Yeah. I would rather you tell me, or if I just got back from lunch and I have something on my face, I would rather you tell me that I have something on my face or I have lettuce in my teeth. Please be kind and tell me.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. I always say, it's like you said, you don't always have to be nice, but be kind is
with our kids, the biggest danger is that we're nice. It's much more helpful that we're kind. When they say that hurtful comment to their friend when they're in the back of the car and you hear it and you say nothing and you think that's being kind, that's not being kind. That's leaving them to have scarred relationships if they don't learn to build better ways of interacting with each other. And we only learn that through our mistakes. Like people spend so much time trying to avoid their mistakes, but their mistakes are their greatest teachers. All of us make mistakes, and they're just the best ways to learn how to do it better. I have a daughter who made some pearly mistakes in her year 6 with relationships, and it just gave her the best ability to go into year 7 in so much healthier state. So, yeah, being kind. Yeah. Being able to have those difficult conversations.
So good. So good. So overcoming obstacles. People pleasing is often tied to fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being too much or not enough. What was one major obstacle you personally had to overcome in order to say no with confidence, and how did you get through it?
So you might have gathered from what we said earlier that I had a somewhat tumultuous childhood. And when I was 2, my brother was born with Down syndrome. And so it did mean that the attention was elsewhere. But I also had a father who was very violent in a way, and a mother who had bipolar. So it meant that I was it was hard growing up. So I learned to people please beautifully. I am like queen of people pleasing, or was. I like to say was. Still can fall into it occasionally. And what I found was I learnt from that when we had friends around, I was safer. So I took that unconsciously into my adulthood, which is what we all do. We take these things, beliefs that we notice, things that we make meaning out of when we're growing up, and we take it into our adulthood, but it's not always helpful in our adulthood. So now when I'm in my adulthood, I'm surrounding myself with friends like nothing else, because my brain says having people around is safer. But like I said before, yes, it's beautiful to have people around, but anything in extreme is not good. So I got to the point when my husband died where I had so many friends that how was I ever going to earn an income, look after 2 children, and keep that quantity of friends as a people pleaser who supports her friends, not just doesn't know how to receive from friends, but knows how to beautifully support friends? How was I ever going to do that? And that was my turning point of realizing something has got to change. And I did it really well in one sense. I let go of friendships, a lot of friendships, so that I could have space for my kids. But that in itself was not the answer, because I just gave more time to the people that were closest to me. So I then had to learn a whole lot more around what my people pleasing was doing to understand how to break that pattern. But yeah, it's made a massive difference to my life.
Oh, wow. You know, like I mentioned before, I came from a family of 6 kids, right? So 6 children, and I'm the middle. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and then there's 2 boys. So in my family, um, my dad wanted to not wait, but like have not, he didn't want to wait. He had my brother like the very next year because he thought that if he waited, he would have another girl. So he wanted to have a boy. So he didn't wait. And so my brother is like a year younger than me. And then we have my other brother. But now there's boys, right? So all of a sudden, I'm like not important. You know what I mean? Because it's like all these girls. Exactly. Right? All these
Finally,
girls.
boys. There's a lot of we have a lot of cultural stuff around boys being valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got into the whole thing of like, I wanted to do everything that was with my brothers, or I was like people pleasing left and right. I'm like, what do I do? Do I do like my older sisters or do like my brothers? Or I was like, what do I do? And so, yeah, I got really good at that people pleasing thing. But I realized that I couldn't keep up because the family is way too big. There was too many things going on. And I just found a lot of, I guess, like, I kind of pulled myself away and I found a lot of me in my reading. I created my own little world in reading, right? So instead of
Absolutely.
yeah,
Escapism. Yep.
it's
Totally.
escapism, right? So that's what I did, and that's where I did it. I was like in my books, and that was my little world. But yeah, there's a way of coping.
And yet there's a way of coping, and yet let's not polarize it and go, it was bad. What's awesome is it was a way of coping, and now it's actually getting to thread through your life differently. So you are the writer because you were the reader. You know, that will have spurred you to wanting to have a influential voice in your writing, will have been that retreat to books and knowing how much they provided safety for you. It gives you a value base to say, it is worth me writing a book.
Yeah.
And so all of us have these incredibly challenging things that happen. No one is exempt from that. It's what are we going to do with it? Does it help propel us towards a greater sense of ourselves and how we can impact the world, how we can share a greater message, whether that's, you're from a Christian point of view of how we can let God be felt through us, or how do I impact my humanity and love people? It's always about how does it enhance that?
Mm-hmm. Like what can you take? So it is, I think it's Genesis 50-20, what the enemy meant for evil, God will use for good, and I always use that because there's so many things in our lives that it could have turned bad, but
Yes.
God will use towards the good.
And I think too, it's not to wash over that it was bad. Yeah, because I think that's one of the dangers, is just to jump in and go, oh, but it was so great because it taught me to write books. No, we need to allow ourselves the grieving and the sadness and the loss of that. It meant that you had a challenging childhood. It meant that you missed feeling that sense of being the focus and being important and being noticed. But it doesn't end at that point. That point is true, but that's not all that you've taken away from it. You've taken so much more, and your resilience, your need to be in front of people is probably partly because you weren't noticed as a kid. Yeah. So it's where most of us, our challenges are what actually steer most of us in our careers, our choices in our who we partner with, all those things. Oftentimes it's our struggle that's made us find that greater thing.
Yeah, that is so true. Health and healing. Chronic people pleasing can wear on our physical, emotional, and spiritual health. What are some healing practices you encourage your clients to use to restore balance, energy, and soul peace after years of overgiving?
Yeah.
I know.
I'm thinking, to me here, it's such a gradual thing. Transformation, we can have moments where it's sudden, like people becoming Christians suddenly, like it can be this incredibly fast thing. But a lot of the time it is a slow drip feed that makes massive change. But it's being patient to those bits and noticing the bits of change. You remember how we said earlier about noticing the cars? It's about giving credit to all the little steps that you take. And when you start doing that, you actually will find more and more momentum in how you are. So I would say that one of the biggest things that we need to learn is to actually pause, but then notice even ourselves pausing. Like, yes, I think I said it before, you still might not get the ultimate reaction. You still might go, okay, yep, I'll come to that party, even though you wanted to say yes. No, even though you wanted to say no, you say yes. But if you've created a pause where you actually gave yourself space to think that you did have an option for a second, that is further on than where you were before, which is just, I have to say yes. And by noticing that shift, you will equally find that you will start to build better capacity, so that down the line, it might be, 3 more party invites, and you're finally saying, you've learnt some strategies. You've gone, I need to have an excuse to get out of something. So you say, actually, I've got an appointment. And that can be absolutely true. I've got an appointment with myself because I need to just stay at home and be with myself. That is an appointment. Yeah. And so learning to be creative about how you can say it in a way that you don't have to, fold and bend and be everything to everyone else.
That is so good. That is so good. In my own healing, I know I had to do that too. And it was that stacking, right? It's that stacking where you pause and you're like, and then soon you're able to be like, no, I'm okay with saying no. And I kind of feel good about it, So it is that stacking.
And there's
It's
so much freedom in it. When you get past that initial, oh, this is so hard. There's so much freedom in it. And I just want your listeners to know it is normal to feel odd when you do something for the first time. The
Yeah.
oddness, the unfamiliar, the uncomfortable is not a sign that it's wrong. It's
Right.
just a sign that you're learning it. That's all that is.
Yeah. And then as it gets easier, as that feeling, and then the next time you breathe a little bit more and you're like, no, that wasn't so bad. I think I can, like you said, make that excuse and be like, no, I gotta make dinner. I have my meal planning tonight. I can't come, or, and then you start.
And not to feel that that's not legitimate for you to
Yeah.
say that. Or I've
Yeah.
had too many late nights. I really can't. And you can always learn to say it in a way that you're not feeling like you're rejecting the other person. You know how much I love seeing you, but I just really have to make sure that I'm organized for tomorrow, or I need
Right.
sleep.
And then the more and more you do it, the easier it gets. And then soon it actually, like I said, it started to feel good. It started to feel good for me. And I was proud of saying, oh, it's Sunday. I have meal planning. I can't, or, those kind of things. It actually did feel good, or it felt really good for me to say, I'm going to the beach today, and those kind of freedom, that freedom of saying, no, I actually, it's a nice day. I'm actually going to the beach today, and then turn it around and say, you want to come?
Beautiful.
Yeah. And it just flipped for me. So the acute awareness, and that is where, like those kind of things where I did find it for myself, the awareness. But so much of breaking free from people pleasing comes down to awareness, recognizing patterns, pausing before reacting, and listening to what the Holy Spirit is saying. What's one moment of awareness that changed everything for you?
I think in setting up my business as a therapist, it was soon after my husband died, and I really had to change, or it was never going to happen. I think I implied that before. It's really easy to make other people's projects happen, but to make mine happen meant that I had to actually prioritize myself. And I realized God had given me this incredible gift. And here I was constantly going, but helping somebody else is more important. And just going, no, I've got to use my gift. My gift is working with people. My gift is to have this message heard. And so for me, that was a real wake up call, was to go, I can always make it about others, and I will live a small life. Not a not valuable life, but just a smaller life. Whereas if I actually start to do what God's called me to do, I am going to have a far bigger impact in the world. And the thing that excites me the most is that I could help people to not take as long as I have to get out of these habits and to be free to live wholeheartedly. That to me is gold.
That is gold. That is so golden, right? You know what you just said. And the fact that it happened after, like you said, your husband passing, to take something and be like, okay, this may have happened, but I need to make this happen, and not get stuck in, because I know when my parents passed, when my mom passed, it's hard to get away from grief. And, to take that and you're like, no, I have to make this happen. And how you said it, where enough of making other people's things happen, it's time to make yours happen. That is so good. That is so good. And I love it, because I'm in that place, where I want to do that for other people. I've written my book, and the third one's on its way, and I keep hearing people say, I'll never write a book. I want to write my book, and I want to do that for them now. I want to help them write their books, because You know, there's so many people out there that they feel like they're not going to be able to do it. And I'm like, no, you can.
Beautiful, Michelle.
And
Beautiful.
that's what we do, right? We're there for people.
And that's what your listener can do. It doesn't matter whether it's about podcasts, books, or it's about being something in your family that you've always wanted to be, or some new career that you've wanted, or some new challenge that you've always wanted to do but you've never had the time to do. That is what we're called to do, is to stop putting ourselves to the back and start putting ourselves forward.
Right.
And allowing others to do the same by being that model in the world.
Right. And by putting ourselves forward, it's not selfish, but look what we're doing. We're actually helping others, you know? And if we don't do what we're doing, if we don't put ourselves forward, how are we able to help others? So
Absolutely.
I just thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. And thank you so much for staying this extra time. So I will be able to post this. And what I'm going to do is we'll be breaking up the podcast into little bits. So you'll be able to have like bits and pieces of this to be posting on your social media also. And yeah.
Can I just invite your listeners, if they do want to reach out to me?
Oh, yes. How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. My business is You Change You. That's you, and then the word change, and then the letter U, changeyou.org.au, and or .com.au, I should say. I've got both, but .com.au is better. And if they want to reach out, they're more than welcome, and they can just do that through the website. But even the website will have just other tips and tricks that might help them to navigate this thing that we call life, that's complicated and messy and beautiful and satisfying. So yeah, please reach out if you'd like to, and wish you all the best, all of you.
I will be putting that in the link. I'll put your website and everything when I post it, and I'll be posting it onto the different platforms, and I'll make sure to have your website and everything there also. So if they didn't catch it, it will be on, and I'll make sure to put it on everything that goes out, and also on YouTube. My YouTube channel will be on there. But yeah, I'm sorry that the Facebook thing didn't work, but that's okay. Like I said, from the beginning, there was something that was important that needed to be heard, and this was it. I'm so glad everything that you said, it really, really is so helpful, and it will touch someone's life, and it will make a huge change. Like it says, you change you. People can't expect other people to change them, but the decisions that they make for themselves, they can change themselves.
Thank you very much for hosting me today, Michelle. It's lovely, and I love your work. It's great.
Thank you again. Aloha. Thank you everyone for coming again on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Until next time, ahui ho.
Thank you for joining us here on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Before leaving, please hit that subscribe button. God's blessings always, and ahui ho.